What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of 30 in 30. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about preventing muscle loss during contest prep. As physique competitors, our biggest enemy is muscle loss during contest prep, pretty much no matter the category that we're in. For myself, as a bodybuilder, if I start losing too much muscle, I will start to look very stringy on stage and will not place very well. So, what are some things that we can do to prevent muscle loss during a contest prep? I feel like a lot of these you probably already know of. But when we're in prep, we tend to do some funny things, so it's always good to have a reminder of things to focus on. The first is training. Now, I know a lot of people are under the guise that when they start training for a competition that they need to do all the reps in the world. They only do high rep training because it burns more calories and it heats them up more and they sweat more. Well, in the grand scheme of things, in order to prevent muscle loss, we don't need to turn into endurance athletes. Our training in contest prep pretty much should be similar to that of the off season. Yes, our strength may slowly diminish over time, but in the grand scheme of things, it should be roughly the same. So I pretty much ran the same training split in my off season that I did in my contest prep, and I didn't notice a lot of strength loss, and I think that's one of the biggest factors that I kept my muscle mass was because I kept my training, essentially my training volume, my training intensity high, no matter if it was in the off season and in contest prep. I still varied my rep ranges, both high rep and low rep. I still lifted heavy. Yes, I obviously did lift light weights, but I kept my training simple. I didn't make drastic changes. The same thing can be said in regards to your diet. When you make huge changes to your diet, you're pushing the 2+ pounds of the rate of loss per week. If you make too big of changes, obviously that can have some muscle loss. Yes, we do like to see the scale go down quickly, especially for those who don't have the patience or the fortitude to diet for a long time. Obviously, we have to push that rate of loss, but unfortunately, if we push that rate of loss too high, if you're losing 2+ pounds on a scale a week, yes, most of that, I should say, might be fat, but some of it might be muscle. So I've always been under the impression that you should shoot for a little bit longer prep. Now, yes, maybe last year I did get things a little bit carried away because I did, from the time that I started my diet to the time where I was officially done competing was roughly 50 weeks, but I really only spent about 30 of those weeks in a caloric deficit. How so? My other factor coming up next is incorporating diet breaks and refeeds. So I'll talk about those separately because they have different physiological and psychological changes that happen to your body, different benefits. So the diet breaks, pretty much everyone that I'm prepping now is going to get a couple diet breaks along the way because yes, I encourage them to have a little bit longer prep. But secondly, allows us to break up the prep into different stages. When we diet straight through, which I've done before, so being in a caloric deficit for 40 odd weeks, I felt like I lost a ton of muscle mass because I never gave my body a chance to rest and recuperate. Essentially, I spent 45 weeks in a caloric deficit with only taking a refeed every 7th day. While refeeds still are good, they do replenish glycogen stores in the system, which may help you train a little bit more harder, which may fill you up a little bit more. It's not going to give your body a time to rest and rebuild. So you have 1 day of high calories, or if you have like 7 days of high calories, which is going to affect your physique better. Sure, your weight might come up a little bit from both of those, more so from a diet break, but if it's controlled, your weight should roughly hold steady, and then you might actually recoup a little bit of muscle mass. That, and it's not only more beneficial, I talked about earlier, from a psychological standpoint, being on a diet break for 7 days was refreshing. It was great. It was a time for my stress levels to come back down, for me to eat a little bit more freely, and that probably also contributed to holding on to a little bit more muscle mass because my cortisol levels were a little bit lower. Some other factors obviously to help with muscle loss during contest prep is just making sure our supplementation's on point. So if we're a gentleman, like myself, if we're taking some kind of a test booster to keep our testosterone levels high, that's also encouraged. Excuse me. If we are someone who does cardio during prep, which I feel like most of us do, I really didn't do a ton last time, but for the most part, we're all going to be doing some type of cardio. So the way that I've always looked at cardio is that you want to do just enough cardio where it helps spur weight loss. I feel like some people will lean very, very heavily towards cardio. Those people are doing an hour plus a day. If they're doing 2 days of cardio, once again, we're turning into endurance athletes. Endurance athletes are not physique athletes. You don't see a marathon runner who has a phenomenal physique. They're very, very skinny. But they're good at doing one thing, and that's running long distances. So we don't want to turn into a marathon runner. We have to do just enough cardio in order for us to help spur weight loss. So let's use cardio more as a tool than as a crutch to lean on, if that makes sense. So wrapping up the video to help keep as much muscle mass during contest prep, you want to keep your training relatively the same, keeping your weights and your rep ranges just like you would in your off season. You want to make sure that you're not decreasing your calories too quickly, so controlling that rate of loss will help spare lean tissue, especially if we're going to 2+ pounds a week. We want to make sure our supplementation is on point if we are using some kind of testosterone booster, and we want to control the amount of cardio that we're doing by using it as a tool and not a crutch. So guys, that is it for today's episode of 30 and 30. Tune in tomorrow for another video. See you then.